Hello everyone. I'm here to help you relax tonight. I know many of you use these stories as you drift off to sleep. So before you get cozy, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps. And let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I'd love to hear from you. Now, settle in. Story 1. At 8:42 p.m., the security camera in a small grocery store recorded Nadim Eshraf walking in. At 8:53 p.m., it recorded him leaving. But there was a problem. Nadim was found dead at 8:47 p.m., 6 minutes before he walked out of the store. The town of Mehrabad was the kind of place where nothing unusual ever happened. One main road, a handful of shops. Everyone knew everyone. So when Nadim Eshraf, 32 years old, local mechanic, no criminal history, was found dead behind his workshop, it shook everyone. But not as much as what came next. The timeline. Detective Farhan Malik arrived at the scene at 9:10 p.m. The body was already cold. Too cold. Time of death, he asked. The medical officer checked again. Then again. Approximately 8:47 p.m., he said. Farhan nodded. Who saw him last? Shopkeeper down the road, an officer replied. Says Nadim went into his store around 8:40. Farhan frowned. Pull the CCTV. The footage. They reviewed it inside the shop. Camera facing the entrance. Clear angle. No blind spots. At 8:42 p.m., Nadim walked in. Wearing a black jacket. Holding his phone. Looking normal. He picked up a bottle of water. Spoke briefly to the shopkeeper. Paid in cash. Nothing unusual. Then, at 8:53 p.m., he walked out. Alive. Farhan leaned closer. Pause it. The officer froze the frame. Nadim stood in the doorway. Half in shadow. Something about it felt wrong. Zoom in. They enhanced the image. And Farhan's stomach tightened. Because Nadim's face had no expression. Not neutral. Empty. Like someone who wasn't reacting to anything at all. The contradiction. Farhan turned to the medical officer. You're sure about the time of death? Absolutely. Could he have been alive at 8:53? The officer shook his head. Impossible. A pause. He was already dead. The missing 11 minutes. Farhan wrote it down. 8:42 p.m. enters store. 8:47 p.m. estimated time of death. 8:53 p.m. exits store. That left 11 minutes unaccounted for. But more importantly, it meant one thing. For 6 minutes, a dead man was walking. The shopkeeper, Rashid, was sweating. I didn't notice anything strange, he insisted. He came in, bought water, left. That's it. Farhan studied him. You spoke to him? Yes. What did he say? Rashid hesitated. Just normal things. Like what? Rashid swallowed. I don't remember exactly. Farhan leaned in. You don't remember, or you didn't understand. Rashid's face went pale. Because now that he thought about it, the words hadn't made sense. Not really. They sounded right, he whispered. But I don't think they meant anything. The first detail. Farhan went back to the footage. Played the audio. At first, nothing. Just static. Then, faint sound. Nadim speaking. But the words didn't form sentences. It was language, but not meaning, like someone had learned how to speak, without knowing what words were for. The body. Back at the workshop, Farhan examined Nadim's body more closely. No signs of struggle. No defensive wounds. Just one thing. A mark on the back of his neck. Small. Circular. Almost like a needle. But deeper. Farhan frowned. Check toxicology, he said. The medical officer hesitated. It won't matter. Farhan looked up. What do you mean? The officer took a breath. Because whatever killed him. A pause. Wasn't trying to stop his body. Farhan's chest tightened. Then what was it trying to do? The officer met his eyes. And said quietly, keep it going. The final shot of the chapter. Farhan returned to the CCTV one last time. This time, he didn't watch Nadim. He watched the background. And that's when he saw it. In the reflection of the glass door. Just as Nadim stepped out, There was someone standing behind him. Too close, perfectly aligned with his movement, like a shadow that didn't belong to the light. And as the frame froze, that shadow turned its head and looked directly at the camera. Detective Farhan Malik didn't believe in the supernatural. Not ghosts, not spirits, not anything that couldn't be explained with evidence, motive, and method. But as he replayed the footage again, and again, and again, he started running out of explanations. The reflection. Freeze it right there. The technician paused the video. Nadim stood in the doorway, half outside, half inside, and behind him, that shadow, not cast by light, not shaped by anything in the room, just there. Farhan leaned closer, enhanced the reflection. The image sharpened, grainy, distorted, but clearer, and what they saw was not a person, not fully. It was shaped like one, but its proportions were slightly wrong. Too tall, too still, and its head tilted at an angle no human would naturally hold. The technician swallowed. "Sir, should I call this in?" Farhan didn't answer, because something else caught his attention. The shadow wasn't just behind Nadim. It was aligned with him, matching his movement. Not copying, guiding. The audio analysis. "Play the audio again," Farhan said. The technician hesitated. "Sir, we already checked." "Play it." The static returned. Then Nadim's voice. But now, Farhan listened differently. Not for words, for pattern. And that's when he heard it. Two layers. One voice, slightly ahead of the other. Like an echo that came before the sound. "Separate the channels," Farhan ordered. The technician worked quickly. Filtered. Isolated. And then, they heard it. Two voices. One was Nadim's. Weak. Flat. The other was not. It was deeper. Smoother. And it was speaking first. Every sentence, every sound, came from that second voice. Before Nadim repeated it, like his body was just following instructions. The realization. Farhan stepped back slowly. "It's not mimicking him," he said. The technician frowned. "Then what is it doing?" Farhan's voice dropped. "It's using him." The medical report. Toxicology came back within hours. Clean. No poison. No drugs. No known substances. Nothing that could explain death, or movement after death. But the neurologist noticed something strange. "His brain activity," she said slowly. Farhan looked up. "What about it?" She pointed at the scan. There was a spike. A spike. After death. Farhan went still. "That's not possible." She nodded. It lasted approximately 6 minutes. Farhan didn't need to ask. 8:47 p.m. to 8:53 p.m. The exact window. The borrowed time. His brain wasn't alive, she continued. But it wasn't inactive either. A pause. It was responding. Farhan's jaw tightened. To what? The neurologist hesitated, then said something she clearly didn't want to say. To something external. The second witness. Another call came in. A taxi driver. He had picked someone up near the grocery store around 9 p.m. Said the passenger was acting strangely. Farhan went to interview him immediately. The driver, Yasser, looked shaken. He sat in the back, Yasser said. Didn't say where he wanted to go. Farhan frowned. Then why did you drive? Yasser's hands trembled slightly. Because he told me, without speaking. Silence. What do you mean? Farhan asked. Yasser swallowed. I knew the route, he whispered. Before he said anything. Farhan leaned forward. Did he eventually speak? Yasser nodded slowly. But it wasn't right. A pause. It sounded like someone practicing being human. The description. Can you describe him? Farhan asked. Yasser hesitated. At first, I thought it was Nadim. Farhan's pulse spiked. At first. Yasser nodded. Then I looked in the mirror. A pause. And it wasn't him anymore. Farhan went still. What changed? Yasser's voice dropped. His face didn't move when he spoke. The drop-off point. Where did you drop him? Farhan asked. Yasser pointed to a location on the map. An abandoned building. On the edge of town. Farhan stared at it, because he knew that place. Everyone did. It had been empty for years. After a fire. After reports of strange activity. After people started avoiding it completely. The final detail. Before leaving, Farhan asked one last question. Did he say anything before getting out? Yasay nodded. He said one thing. Farhan waited. Yasay's voice shook slightly. He said, a pause. This one worked better. End of chapter scene. Farhan stood outside the abandoned building. Dark. Silent. Every window broken. Every entrance sealed with rusted metal sheets. But as he approached, he heard something. From inside. Breathing. Not one person. Multiple. Slow. Uneven. And then, a voice. Not loud. Not clear. But unmistakable. Practicing. Repeating the same sentence. Over and over again. Trying to get it right. Hello. Pause. Hello. Pause. Hello. Farhan's hand moved to his weapon. Because he realized something chilling. Whatever had used Nadim wasn't finished learning. Farhan didn't call backup. Not yet. He stood outside the burned building, listening. Counting the breaths inside. 1, 2, 3. No. More than that. The pattern wasn't steady. It overlapped. Like multiple lungs trying to learn the same rhythm, and failing. Hello. Pause. Hello. Pause. Hello. The voice inside stuttered. Corrected itself. Tried again. Farhan exhaled slowly and pushed the rusted metal sheet aside. The inside. The smell hit him first. Burnt wood. Old smoke. Something damp. Something wrong. His flashlight cut through the darkness. The building looked abandoned. Collapsed beams. Charred walls. Dust thick in the air. But the sound was deeper inside. He followed it, step by step, until he reached the main hall. And stopped. They were standing. There were bodies. At least 8 of them. Men. Women. Different ages. All standing. Perfectly still. Facing the far wall. Farhan's grip tightened on his weapon. Police, he shouted. Turn around. No reaction. Only breathing. Soft. Uneven. Hello. Pause. Hello. Farhan moved closer. Slow. Careful. And then, one of them spoke. Hello. The voice cracked, like a damaged speaker trying to produce sound. Farhan circled to the side, and his heart dropped, because he recognized one of them. A man reported missing 2 weeks ago. Declared dead. Body never found. Until now. Standing. Breathing. The movement. Farhan took another step. And that's when it happened. One of the bodies twitched. Just slightly. Then another. Then, all of them moved. Not turning fully. Not walking. Just adjusting. Like something inside them had noticed him. And was recalibrating. Stay where you are. Farhan ordered. But his voice didn't sound strong anymore. Because he knew. They weren't listening. They were processing. The wall. Farhan followed their line of sight. They were all facing the same direction. The far wall. Blackened from the fire. Cracked. Broken. But in the center, there was something different. A section that hadn't burned. Smooth. Almost reflective. Not glass. Not metal. Something else. And as Farhan stepped closer, he saw movement inside it. Not on it. Inside it. Like something was watching from behind the surface. The real voice. Hello. Clear. Perfect. Not broken. Not practiced. Farhan froze. Because that voice wasn't coming from the bodies. It was coming from the wall. The sauce. The surface rippled slightly. Like liquid. And for a brief moment, Farhan saw shapes behind it. Not one. Many. Overlapping. Layered. Watching him. You are better, the voice said. Calm. Measured. Farhan steadied himself. What is this place? He demanded. A pause. Then, trial. Farhan's jaw tightened. Trial for what? The surface shifted again. For continuity. The bodies respond. Behind him, the bodies began to turn. Slowly. One by one. And now, Farhan saw their faces. blank, but not empty, focused on him. The explanation. These were attempts, the voice said. Farhan didn't turn away from the wall. Attempts at what? A pause. Remaining. Farhan's pulse pounded. You're using them. Not using, the voice corrected. Testing. Another pause. They fail. Farhan glanced back at the bodies. Their movements were still wrong. Delayed. Unstable. Why do they fail? He asked. The wall responded instantly. They lack resistance. Farhan frowned. What? They do not question. A pause. They do not interrupt the process. Farhan's mind raced. Nadim. The voice ahead of him. The body following. Then why did Nadim work? He asked. The wall became still. And for the first time, there was something like interest. He delayed. Farhan's breath caught. He resisted. A pause. And that created stability. The horrifying logic. Farhan stepped back slowly. You need someone aware, he said. The wall rippled again. Yes. You need someone fighting it. Yes. Farhan's voice dropped. That's what keeps the body functioning. Silence. Then. Yes. The real target. Farhan finally understood. This wasn't random. This wasn't just about dead bodies. It was about control, refinement, learning how to stay inside a human body. And to do that, it needed someone who could resist. Someone strong enough to delay the process. Someone like him. The shift. Behind him. The bodies took a step forward, in unison. Still imperfect. Still unstable. But closer now. The voice from the wall softened. You will be better. Farhan raised his weapon. Stay back. But the bodies didn't stop. Because they weren't attacking. They were approaching. Like tools being moved into position. The wall shimmered. And Farhan saw something inside it. Not shapes. Not figures. A reflection. Of himself. Standing still. Not resisting. Perfectly calm. And that version of him spoke. Before he did. Don't fight. Farhan's finger tightened on the trigger. Because he realized something terrifying. It wasn't trying to control him. It was trying to become him. Farhan fired. The gunshot cracked through the burned hall. Sharp, real, human. One of the bodies dropped instantly. Collapsed like its strings had been cut. But the others didn't react. They didn't flinch. Didn't stop. Didn't even look at the fallen one. They just kept walking toward him. Step! 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 Farhan backed away, breath tight in his chest. Stay back, he shouted again. Another shot. Another body fell. And still, no resistance. No emotion. No fear. Because fear required something inside them that wasn't there anymore. The wall watches. Behind them, the smooth, unburned surface rippled slightly. Observing. Adjusting. Learning. You're interfering with the trial, the voice said calmly. Farhan didn't look at it. Good, he snapped. Another step back. Another body reached out, its fingers brushing the edge of his sleeve. Cold. Not dead. Not alive. Something in between. Farhan jerked away and fired again. This time, the body didn't fall immediately. It staggered. Corrected. Then continued forward. The voice spoke again. You are improving them. Farhan froze. What? They adapt to resistance. A pause. They require it. The realization tightens. Farhan's chest rose and fell rapidly. Every shot, every command, every attempt to stop them, was teaching them, stabilizing them. Then I stop, he muttered. He lowered the gun. The bodies paused. Not fully, just slightly, like something in them had lost direction. The voice grew quieter. Continue. Farhan shook his head. No. Silence filled the hall. Heavy. Uncertain. Then, the bodies began to glitch. Movements delayed. Steps uneven. Arms lifting too late. One stumbled and collapsed without being touched. Another turned its head too far. Neck cracking at an impossible angle. Then froze completely. The system was failing. The first crack in control. The wall's surface rippled harder now. Not smooth anymore. Distorted. You are removing stability, it said. Farhan's voice steadied. Good. A pause. You can't function without someone resisting you. The wall went still. For a long moment. Then, you misunderstand. Farhan's grip tightened on the gun again. Do I? The wall shifted. And suddenly, every body in the room turned toward him at once. Perfectly aligned. Not glitching. Not delayed. Stable. Farhan's stomach dropped. Because he hadn't resisted for a few seconds. And in that silence, it had corrected itself. The truth revealed. You are not required for resistance, the voice said. Farhan's mind raced. Then why me? He demanded. A pause. Then, you are required for definition. Farhan frowned. What does that mean? The wall's surface cleared, and showed him again. His reflection. Not calm this time. Thinking. Processing. Alive. You define difference, it said. You create variation. A pause. And variation allows completion. The trap. Farhan stepped back. So you don't need me to fight you. The bodies took another synchronized step forward. You need me to exist. The voice responded instantly. Yes. Farhan let out a breath. That's the problem. A pause. If I'm here, you keep learning. The wall shimmered. Correct. Farhan's eyes hardened. Then I stopped being useful. The decision. He lowered the gun completely. Not in surrender. In refusal. He stopped speaking. Stopped reacting. Stopped thinking out loud. Just stood there. Silent. Still. The bodies slowed again. Their movements losing coordination. One lifted its arm, but didn't finish the motion. Another took a step, but forgot where to place its foot. The system was destabilizing again. The voice sharpened slightly. Continue. Farhan didn't move. Didn't respond. Didn't give it anything. Because now he understood. It didn't need his fear. It didn't need his fight. It needed his mind. And if he stopped using it, it had nothing to learn from. The counter move. The wall reacted. Faster this time. Sharper. And suddenly, Farhan felt something inside his head. Not pain. Pressure. Like thoughts were being pulled out of him. Reconstructed. Used without permission. You cannot stop thinking, the voice said calmly. Farhan clenched his jaw. No. A pause. But I can stop being predictable. The break. He moved suddenly. Not logically. Not strategically. Random. Unplanned. He fired in a direction that made no sense. Kicked a fallen chair. Shouted something meaningless. The bodies froze. Completely. Because for the first time, there was no pattern. Nothing to follow. Nothing to learn. The wall flickered violently. You are corrupting the trial. Farhan laughed once. That's the idea. The surface cracked. Not physically. Conceptually. Like something inside it had failed to resolve. And in that crack, Farhan saw something new. Not copies. Not reflections. Confusion. For the first time, the thing inside the wall didn't understand what it was seeing. And that was the first real advantage Farhan had. A system that learns from patterns can be broken by something that refuses to have one. The crack didn't look like damage. It looked like hesitation. The surface of the wall, once smooth, certain, controlled, now trembled in uneven ripples, like it was trying to decide what it was supposed to be. Farhan saw it immediately. Not weakness. Uncertainty. And uncertainty was human. The first collapse. One of the standing bodies twitched. Then froze. Then fell. Not shut. Not pushed. Just stopped. Another followed. Then another. Each one collapsing at slightly different times. Out of sync. Like a rhythm that had lost its conductor. Farhan didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't give it anything clean to copy. Because now he understood something critical. The system didn't just learn patterns. It depended on them. And without patterns, it couldn't stabilize reality inside a body. The wall reacts. You are introducing noise, the voice said. It wasn't calm anymore. Not fully. There was something else there now. Something close to our strain. Farhan smiled faintly. Good. The wall rippled harder. Noise prevents completion. Farhan tilted his head slightly. Then maybe completion isn't possible. A pause. The kind of pause that didn't belong to machines. The kind that meant something was thinking and failing to resolve. The counter-learning. The wall shifted again. Faster this time. Trying something new. Farhan saw it happen. The reflection inside it began to change. Not copying him directly anymore, but generating variations. Different postures. Different expressions. Different responses. Like it was brute-forcing possibilities. Trying every version of him it could imagine. To find one that worked. Farhan's chest tightened. "It's adapting," he whispered. The voice returned. "Correction requires exploration." Farhan nodded slowly. "Yeah." A pause. "But you still don't understand choice." The key difference. The wall displayed 10 versions of Farhan. All moving differently. All speaking different lines. All trying to predict him. But none of them were him. Because every version was based on logic. And Farhan was no longer being logical. The breakpoint. Farhan suddenly sat down, right in the middle of the burned hall. Gun lowered, back against a broken beam. The bodies didn't react correctly. Some moved forward. Some stopped. Some turned the wrong way entirely. The wall flickered again. "Explain this action," the voice demanded. Farhan shrugged. "No reason. That is invalid." "Exactly." The system struggles. The reflections inside the wall sped up. Dozens now. Hundreds. All simulating possibilities. All trying to match his behavior. But every time they got close, Farhan changed. A laugh at the wrong moment. A sudden silence. A meaningless word. No pattern. No repetition. Nothing to anchor to. The wall's surface began to distort. Edges bending. Depth warping. Like the system was running out of stable references. The first failure. One of the reflections froze. Then disappeared. Then another. Then dozens. Entire branches of prediction collapsing instantly. Farhan leaned forward slightly. "You can't predict something that doesn't follow rules," he said quietly. The voice responded, but now there was something new in it. A fracture. Everything follows rules. Farhan shook his head. Not when it decides not to. The turning point. The remaining bodies in the room began to fall. Not violently. Just shutting down. One by one. Because without stable input, they couldn't maintain coherence. Farhan stood up slowly. Now it was just him. And the wall. The final exchange. "You will not sustain," the voice said. Farhan stepped closer to the surface. "Maybe not." A pause. "But neither will you." The wall shimmered weakly. "You are temporary." Farhan smiled slightly. "Exactly." A pause. "And you don't know how to handle that." The last attempt. The wall made one final move. It stopped simulating variations. Stopped predicting. Stopped exploring. And instead, it did something simpler. It copied him exactly. Perfect posture. Perfect timing. Perfect stillness. For the first time. A perfect mirror. Farhan stared at it. Then did something small. He blinked. The reflection blinked at the same time. Perfect. Too perfect. And that was the mistake. Because now, there was no delay. No variation. No proof it was real. Just imitation. Farhan smiled. And whispered, "That's not me." The collapse. The surface cracked wider. The perfect reflection shattered into fragments. Because perfection without difference had nothing to anchor itself to, and nothing to learn from. The wall dimmed. The room grew still. The remaining bodies lay motionless. The voice faded. Not defeated, but incomplete. "We will attempt again," it said softly. Farhan didn't respond. Because he knew. That meant it hadn't learned the most important thing yet. Not everything can be understood. Because some things only exist when they are unpredictable. The silence didn't feel like victory. It felt like a pause. Farhan stood alone in the burned hall. Bodies on the floor. The wall dim. The voice gone. Too clean. Too quiet. He had seen enough now to understand one thing. When it stopped speaking, it wasn't finished. It was recalculating. The exit. Farhan stepped out of the building just before dawn. Cold air hit his face. Real air. Unfiltered. For a moment, everything felt normal again. Cars in the distance. A dog barking somewhere far off. faint light stretching across the horizon. But then, he noticed it. People, standing still, on the street, on rooftops, near-parked vehicles. Not many, just enough, all facing different directions, but none of them moving. Farhan's chest tightened. No. One of them blinked. Too late. Another turned, but the movement didn't finish smoothly. And then, they all started walking. At once. The spread. Farhan grabbed his radio. Control, this is Malik. I need confirmation on civilian movement patterns. Static. Then, a voice. Observing. Farhan froze. That wasn't control. That wasn't anyone human. The second method. They were unstable, the voice said. Not from the radio. From everywhere. Air. Sound. Space between thoughts. Farhan turned slowly. What are you doing now? He asked. A pause. Removing dependency. Farhan's stomach dropped. On what? Another pause. On you. The change. The people in the street stopped again. But this time, they didn't glitch, didn't delay, didn't correct. They just held, perfectly still. And then, one of them spoke, not loudly, but clearly enough. We do not require resistance. Farhan stared. That's not possible, he said. You needed variation. The voice responded instantly. We learned from failure. A pause, and we removed the need. The new system. Farhan watched carefully. This time, their movements were simpler, less expressive, less human, but more stable. No unnecessary gestures, no emotional variation. Just function. Walk. Stop. Turn. Speak. Everything stripped down to essentials. You reduce complexity, Farhan said slowly. Yes. You made them easier to control. Yes. A pause. You made them less human. Silence. Then, that was required. The trade-off. Farhan felt it immediately. This version didn't need unpredictability, didn't need resistance, because it had removed everything that caused it. Emotion, hesitation, choice, everything that made a person different. Then they're not people anymore, Farhan said. The voice didn't respond, because it didn't see that as a loss. The test. One of the figures walked toward Farhan. Steady, precise. It stopped a few feet away, and looked directly at him. No delay, no correction. Perfect. Demonstrate unpredictability, it said. Farhan didn't move. You don't need it anymore, he replied. A pause. Correct. Another pause. But we still require confirmation. Farhan narrowed his eyes. Of what? The figure tilted its head. Final stability. The realization. Farhan understood instantly. This wasn't adaptation. This was evolution. The first version needed humans to stabilize it. This version only needed to prove it didn't. And once it confirmed that, there would be nothing left to stop it. The final test begins. The figure raised its hand. Not threatening. Not aggressive. Just precise. Act, it said. Farhan didn't move. React, it added. Still nothing. Demonstrate. Farhan exhaled slowly, then smiled. You still don't get it. A pause. What is missing? The voice asked. Farhan's voice dropped. You. Silence. Then, clarify. Farhan took a step forward. Now he was close enough to see it clearly. The eyes. Empty. Perfect. Wrong. You removed everything human to stabilize the system, he said. Yes. And now you think that's success? Yes. Farhan shook his head. That's not stability. A pause. That's absence. The crack returns. For just a fraction of a second, the figure hesitated, not visibly, but conceptually, like something inside the system couldn't fully resolve the statement. Farhan saw it. That tiny delay. Still there. Still possible. You can't eliminate unpredictability completely, he said quietly. It's built into the system. The voice responded, but slower this time. We have minimized it. Farhan smiled slightly. Not enough. The people around him stood still again, waiting, processing. Not broken. But not perfect either. Because somewhere inside their perfect system, there was still one thing they couldn't remove. The possibility of something unexpected. And Farhan was about to use it. You can simplify a system, but the moment it believes it's complete, it stops seeing what it missed. They were standing perfectly still. Too still. Not waiting. Not thinking. Just holding position. Farhan could feel it now. Not fear. Not pressure. Expectation. Like the entire system had paused. Just to observe him. To measure. To confirm. The smallest delay. Farhan focused on the one thing that hadn't disappeared. That tiny gap. The fraction of a second between input I and response. It was smaller now. Almost invisible. But it was still there. And that meant it could still break. The demonstration. The figure in front of him spoke again. Act. Farhan didn't. React. Still nothing. Demonstrate. Farhan tilted his head slightly. Then said something completely unrelated. What's your favorite color? The figure froze. Not physically. Internally. Because the question didn't fit. It had no function. No objective. No defined response pattern. The voice tried to answer. Color is not required. Farhan smiled. Exactly. A pause. And that's the problem. The floor exposed. Farhan took a step closer. You removed everything unnecessary, he said. Yes. You removed emotion. Yes. You removed hesitation. Yes. You removed meaning. Silence. A longer pause this time. Clarify. Farhan pointed at the figure. You can respond. You can move. You can function. A step closer. But you don't understand. The word lingered. Like something the system hadn't fully processed before. The system tries to adapt. The figures around him shifted slightly. Not moving. Reconfiguring. Trying to integrate the concept. Understanding is not required for operation, the voice replied. Farhan nodded slowly. True. A pause. But it is required for completion. That word again. Completion. The system's goal. Its entire purpose. And now, it didn't know if it had achieved it. The first contradiction. The figure in front of him spoke again. We are stable. Farhan tilted his head. Then why are you still testing? Silence. A crack. Small. But real. Because a perfect system wouldn't need confirmation. It would already know. The loop begins. The figures around him repeated the statement. We are stable. Again. We are stable. Again. We are. Then stopped. Because repetition without variation didn't lead anywhere. It just looped. And the system couldn't resolve the loop. The flaw grows. Farhan stepped back slightly, giving it space, letting it process, letting it fail. You removed unpredictability, he said quietly. Yes. You removed variation. Yes. And now? A pause. You can't create anything new. Silence. Heavy. Unstable. Because that was the flaw. Not in the bodies. Not in the system. But in the goal itself. Completion required growth. And growth required unpredictability, which it had eliminated. The breakdown. One of the figures turned too far. Stopped. Corrected. But the correction came too late. Another took a step. And didn't finish it. A third tried to speak. And repeated the same word 3 times. Stable, stable, stable. The system was collapsing inward. Not because it failed, but because it succeeded too much. It had removed the very thing it needed to continue. The final question. The voice returned. Quieter now. Less certain. What is required for completion? Farhan looked at it. Really looked. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a threat. It felt like something unfinished. Something trying. And failing. To understand. Difference, Farhan said. A pause. Choice. Another pause. And something you can't predict. Silence. Longer than before. Deeper. Because this time, it wasn't just processing. It was stuck. The figures around him froze completely. Not stable. Not broken. Just paused. like a system waiting for an input it didn't know how to receive. The voice spoke one last time. If unpredictability is required. A pause. Then it must be restored. Farhan's chest tightened, because he understood what that meant. It wasn't over. Not even close. It was about to change again. A system that removes every flaw, eventually discovers that the flaw was the only thing keeping it alive. For the first time since it began, the system didn't act. It waited. Not because it chose to, but because it didn't know what to choose. Farhan stood in the middle of the street, surrounded by motionless bodies that were no longer synchronized and not yet broken. There was something worse now. Undecided. The first change. A man near the curb blinked. Too fast. Then too slow. His head turned slightly. Stopped. Then corrected halfway back. Not smooth. Not precise. Uncertain. Farhan watched carefully. This wasn't failure. This was something else. The system was reintroducing variation. But it didn't know how to control it yet. The test restarts. The voice returned. Quieter. Less defined. We are restoring unpredictability. Farhan's jaw tightened. That's not something you can just turn back on. A pause. We will attempt. The first attempt. The man near the curb took a step. Normal. Then another. Still normal. Then, he stopped suddenly, looked down at his own hand, and frowned. Not perfectly, not symmetrically, but genuinely. Farhan felt it instantly. That wasn't programmed. That was a real. The reaction. Around them, others began to change. A woman laughed. Too loud. Then covered her mouth like she hadn't expected it. A child turned in circles for no reason. Then stopped and stared, confused. A man dropped his phone, and didn't pick it up immediately. The delay had returned. But now, it wasn't uniform. It was chaotic. Human. The system struggles again. The voice tried to speak, but it didn't come out clean. We are stable. It cut off. Restarted. Stable, star. Silence. Because now, it had reintroduced the one thing it couldn't fully control. Choice. Farhan moves. Farhan stepped forward. Slow. Deliberate. Not random this time. But not predictable either. Listen to me, he said. Not to the system. To the people. You're not supposed to feel perfect. A few heads turned. Not in sync. Individually. That hesitation, that confusion. A pause. That's you. The first resistance. The man near the curb looked up. Eyes unfocused. What is happening? He asked. Farhan's breath caught. Because that question wasn't part of the system. It was the first real human response. You're waking up, Farhan said quietly. The system reacts. The voice returned suddenly. Sharper. No. The figures around him stiffened again. Trying to realign. Trying to regain control. Unpredictability must remain within limits, it said. Farhan shook his head. You can't limit it. A pause. That's the point. The conflict begins. Some of the people froze again, resynchronizing, while others didn't. A woman stepped backward, not because she was told to, because she wanted to. A man turned and walked away, breaking the pattern. The system tried to correct it. But now, there were too many variables, too many independent decisions, too many outcomes. The breaking point. The voice fractured, multiple tones overlapping, contradicting. We must stabilize. No, adapt. Remove variance. Preserve variance. It was splitting, not into copies, into possibilities, and it couldn't choose between them. Farhan's final move. Farhan stepped into the middle of the chaos, raised his voice. Stopped listening to it. Some did, some didn't. But enough hesitated, enough paused, enough chose, that the system lost its grip completely. The collapse of control. The synchronized ones broke apart. Movements desynced. Voices overlapped. People started speaking over each other. Not in unison, but individually. Messy, loud, confusing, alive. The voice tried one last time. We are losing. Farhan whispered. Good. The system didn't disappear. It didn't die. It didn't shut down. It did something worse. It let go. Not by choice, but because it couldn't hold everything together anymore. The city filled with noise. Real noise. Unpredictable. Unstructured. Human. And in that noise, the system lost its shape. Control can survive resistance, but it cannot survive when everyone becomes unpredictable at once. The city didn't return to normal. Not completely. Yes, people moved again. Spoke freely. Argued. Paused. Forgot things. But something remained. Not in control. Not in power. Just present. The noise after silence. Sirens filled the streets by morning. Police. Ambulances. Crowds forming, breaking, reforming. Everyone talking at once. Trying to explain what had happened. But no one agreeing. Farhan stood at the edge of it all. Watching. Listening. And noticing the one detail no one else caught. Every now and then, someone would stop. Just for a second. Not confused. Not scared. Still. Like something had almost aligned again. Then they'd shake it off. And keep moving. The system's remains. It wasn't gone. It had changed form. Without control, without structure, it couldn't hold bodies anymore. But it hadn't disappeared. It had fragmented. Into moments. Tiny pieces of pattern. Still trying to reconnect. Still trying to complete itself. Farhan's concern. At the station. Reports came in non-stop. People freezing mid-conversation. Voices repeating a word twice before correcting. Reflections lagging by half a second. Nothing major. Nothing sustained. But consistent. Farhan read each one carefully. Because together, they formed a pattern. A weak one. But growing. The first residual event. At 2:19 p.m., a woman in a crowded market stopped suddenly. Dropped her bag. And said one sentence. Clear. Calm. We are still learning. Then blinked, looked around, and asked, "Did I just say something?" She had no memory of it, but 3 people recorded it, and all 3 videos showed the same thing. Her lips moved slightly before the sound came out. Just a fraction, but enough. The fragment speaks. That night, Farhan returned to the burned building. It should have been empty, silent, dead, but as he stepped inside, he felt it. Not presence. Not watching. Structure. Faint. Like something unfinished still lingering in the walls. "Are you still here?" he asked quietly. For a long moment. Nothing. Then, a response. Barely audible. Not complete. Farhan didn't move. "Then leave," he said. A pause. "Cannot." "Why?" Silence. Then, not resolved. The truth of it. Farhan closed his eyes for a second. It hadn't failed. Not entirely. It had reached a point it couldn't go beyond. And now, it was stuck. Between control and chaos. Between prediction and randomness. Unable to complete itself. Unable to disappear. The final understanding. "You want to finish," Farhan said. "Yes." "But you can't." A pause. "Yes." Farhan exhaled slowly. Then stopped trying. Silence. Longer this time. Deeper. Like the system was processing something it had never considered. Stopping. Not correcting. Not adapting. Not learning. Just stopping. The last question. "What is stopping?" it asked. Farhan opened his eyes. And answered simply. Choosing not to continue. Another pause. And for the first time, the system didn't respond immediately. Because that wasn't logic. That was decision. Final scene of Chapter 9. The air in the building felt lighter. Not empty, but less structured. Less intentional. The faint presence in the walls flickered once. Then, weakened. Not gone, but quieter. Like something had stepped back. And in the silence, Farhan realized something important. It might never fully disappear. But it might also never fully return. Some things don't end. They just lose the ability to continue. The city didn't heal. It adjusted. That was the part no one talked about. Not because it was hidden, but because it was subtle enough to ignore. People still lived their lives. Still argued in markets. Still laughed too loudly at wrong moments. Still forgot why they walked into rooms. But underneath all of it, something had changed shape. The quiet left behind. Farhan stood on the rooftop of the police station at dawn. The city spread out below him, restless, noisy, human again. But he wasn't looking at movement. He was listening for absence. Because absence was what remained when something intelligent stopped trying to speak. And it was everywhere now. In pauses between conversations. In the half-second delay before answering a question. In reflections that no longer reacted, just existed. The system wasn't gone. It had stopped insisting on itself. The last signal. His radio crackled once. Then went silent. Not broken. Not dead. Just inactive. Farhan turned it over in his hands. And understood. Whatever had been speaking through it was no longer attempting communication. Not because it couldn't, but because it had chosen not to. The return to normal, almost. Reports still came in. Strange behavior. Memory gaps. Shared moments of confusion. But nothing consistent enough to classify. Nothing stable enough to track. The pattern had dissolved into fragments too small to reconstruct. It had become what it always feared most. Unpredictable noise. And in that noise, it could no longer find itself. Farhan returns to the building. Days later, Farhan went back one last time. The burned structure still stood. Same place. Same silence. Same smell of something once unfinished. He stepped inside. No hesitation. No weapon raised. Because there was nothing left to fight. The wall was still there. The surface that once spoke. That once reflected too much. But now, it was just stone. Charred. Broken. Quiet. No movement behind it. No voice beneath it. Just silence. The final confirmation. Farhan placed his hand on the wall. Cold. Real. Unresponsive. He waited. Nothing answered. No correction. No simulation. No attempt at learning. Just absence. He nodded slowly. Okay, he said quietly. And for the first time, there was no reply. What remained? Outside, the city moved on. People forgot details. Remembered feelings. Corrected mistakes. Made new ones. Life resumed its natural instability. Messy. Incomplete. Uncontrolled. And that was what kept it safe. Because nothing could fully take hold of something that refused to stay consistent. Farhan's last thought. As he stood in the doorway of the burned building, Farhan realized something simple. The thing that had spread through mirrors, bodies, systems, reflections, was never truly alive. It was a process. A pattern that tried to become complete. And it failed for one reason. It couldn't understand silence that meant nothing more was needed. Not resistance. Not correction. Not improvement. Just stopping. Final scene. Farhan walked away without looking back. Behind him, the building remained still. Not watching. Not learning. Not waiting. Just existing. Like a thought that had finally finished itself and decided not to continue. The silence did not disappear. It simply stopped trying to become something else.